Is Diddy gonna go to jail? What do you think?
I think he's in trouble.
Let's get to Diddy's courtroom meltdown. And you could visibly see that he was very angry.
We all know who's got something to say about this whole Diddy trial, and that's 50 Cent! Those of you who don't know, 50 Cent was the absolute first one banging on Diddy. He's been doing it for over a decade now.
Puffy's confirmed for Freeport. That's what? Nah. Everybody was scared to drink. Coffee cups. Your butt sore.
You're not getting the whole story from inside Diddy's courtroom, and that's no coincidence. Behind the scenes, Diddy reportedly snapped, turning on his own legal team in a fiery outburst that led the judge to halt the proceedings. What set him off? A leaked video dropped right in the middle of the hearing, dredging up past scandals they hoped were buried for good. And 50 Cent? He's having a field day, calling it karma, and lighting up social media with shots and celebratory posts. This has gone beyond courtroom tension. It's spiraling fast, and the truth is breaking loose. Stay tuned.
He do it, right?
Yeah.
I know you've been heavy on social media talking about it.
He did it. And I'm the only one who's been vocal about this long before it actually.
Oh, you've been saying this for a long time now. And then no one was, they're just, why is he saying this? And now it's coming out like crazy. I mean,
But I also didn't participate. I also didn't go to those parties.
Yeah.
So a lot of the celebrity culture that you don't hear saying anything is because they participated to a degree.
But was there a reason you never went to those parties back in the day? Obviously, I know what was going on there, but is there a reason you never did?
I'm just not with all that freaky shit. Put the stuff to these door. I'm not into that type of stuff. I'm just a little more, maybe you could say basic or normal.
50 Cent saw this coming from a mile away. Years ago, he raised alarms about Diddy's strange welcome rituals and hinted at unsettling behavior happening behind the scenes. Back then, most people dismissed it as just noise. But now, with courtroom revelations landing like bombs, those early warnings suddenly feel chillingly accurate. Explosive new evidence is surfacing, and 50's not staying quiet. He's posting non-stop, throwing shade, and soaking in the spotlight. But the real game changer? Cassie Ventura's testimony. It didn't just shake things up, it cracked the entire case wide open.
Well, I think the first thing for the public to know that this is the first piece of evidence, kind of, if you will, is to have everyone remember how serious it was when we all saw it. And even though these jurors are expected to be unbiased and detached from anything in Diddy's world, so we're assuming they perhaps haven't seen the video, they now are probably going to feel the same way that the American public did when there was accusations and then there was some proof of it. So obviously there's a conversation. The prosecution is framing Diddy as a serial offender, but on the other hand, Diddy's defense is saying he's flawed, but not criminal. And so we're seeing somebody that actually has admitted his defense is saying, yes, he's made mistakes, but that does not mean he's a trafficker and all the other things that he is accused of. But I think, it pulls on the heartstrings and detaches people completely in any way that they may have been to the entertainer to now look at him as the human being that did something egregious, perhaps, and trying to connect the dots between if you are capable and open to doing something like this, what else might you do? And so I think it was a strong way to open up the argument. And I think that Diddy's team is going to have an uphill battle to climb to try to put that to the wayside of the jury's.
Rafael Flores was one of the first to speak up. Back then, he was a hotel security guard. Now he's with the LAPD. He testified to finding Cassie visibly shaken, hiding near broken glass. Diddy tried to brush it off as just a simple argument, but things escalated fast. When he returned with a bag of cash and a warning to stay silent, Flores didn't back down. Then came the phones. Diddy allegedly tried to grab staff devices to erase any evidence. That's when Flores stepped in, pinned him to the wall, and ended it right there. No fear, no backing down, just doing what was right when it counted.
They talked about that previously, but clearly they tried to remove these videos. And he talks about how he took some on his own phone. As the transcript, sorry, there's so many transcripts, I'm making sure I gather you everything. He says he took video of the video to show his wife because he knew no one would believe it. he wanted to show his wife. So there was a copy on his phone as well, ironically. So yeah, interesting details in this, and kudos to this guy. My goodness, to have the strength to be able to stand up to Diddy, to pin him against the wall, to confront him in that courtroom. I applaud this guy wholeheartedly. Bravo to him for standing up, and bravo to Cassie, who is out there still giving her testimony. We'll be reporting on her as well. We had an amazing conversation yesterday.
Turns out, 50 Cent didn't just blow the whistle. He may have helped push the whole truth into the spotlight. According to insiders, his team was directly involved in getting the full, uncut hotel footage into the courtroom. No edits, no filters. Just raw, disturbing video that left the jury frozen in silence. While that tape rolled, 50 was online sounding off, making his "told y'all" moment loud and undeniable. But the real gut punch came when Cassie Ventura, almost 9 months pregnant, took the stand. Her testimony was emotional, intense, and deeply unsettling. She spoke of obsessive control, twisted rituals, and a haunting pattern of behavior. The courtroom atmosphere shifted, and the darkest chapter of this trial may still be ahead.
The star witness is Cassie. She was a singer, Cassie Ventura. She signed with him when she was 18 years old, or right around there. She became a singer. She signed like a 10-record deal with Bad Boy Records, which is his. And within like 2 years, he started having. And he was with a different woman at the time, but shockingly, he wasn't faithful. And started sleeping with Cassie. And then she testified how in the beginning, by the way, when she took the stand, she was 8.5 months pregnant yesterday. His side was so worried about that making her look overly sympathetic that they asked if she could be brought in and put on the stand without the jury in the room. Look at this. I mean, like, apparently they're not exaggerating. She had that enormous belly that we all get in the very, very last few days, which is where like, it becomes like voyeuristic to even look at a woman at that point. It's just out of control. God bless you, Cassie. So anyway, the judge overruled that and said she can walk in, her full pregnant self, and she did. And she testified about how he started very early on telling her he wanted her to participate in these freak-offs. That's what he called them. And these things, I mean, it's the right word for them. I mean, they're absolutely depraved behavior where he would hire these male stars, and she's testifying, this is all, her testimony, that they would come over and that Sean Combs would be there watching and directing everything, and that there would be multiple within the one freak-off, which could go for days. But even if it went for hours, there'd be multiple sessions in which she would have to perform with these male stars, including in like outfits and fishnets and masquerade masks and hooker heels, is how it was described. And he would tell them exactly what he wanted and how, and then he would participate in some of them. We talked yesterday, forgive me, listening audience, about how he allegedly, both himself and through the male, urinated on her and I guess in her mouth, to where she testified she was gagging. She thought she was going to throw up. She testified that the freak-offs, quote, became a job where there was no space to do anything else but to recover and to just feel normal again, that they could go from 36 hours to as long as 4 days, that they took, quote, a big chunk of my life, sometimes on a nearly weekly basis. At the end of the sessions, the hotel linens were often very soiled with baby oil residue, as well as bodily fluids, including blood and urine. And his staff, keep in mind, he's being accused of like racketeering, like the way a mob boss does, where he has an enterprise of criminals around him. That's why these details are important, that his staff would both set up the freak-off rooms and clean up the freak-off rooms, that eventually they graduated to adding like television lighting, like Klieg lights. And
one of the most unsettling moments in Cassie's testimony revolved around a strange and repeated detail: baby oil. She testified that Diddy insisted she remain constantly glistening, requiring it to be reapplied every few minutes. According to her, they would go through nearly 10 bottles during these troubling episodes. The oil was warmed, applied methodically, and used in excess, not just on her, but reportedly on others too. The aftermath painted a chaotic picture: damaged furniture, stained linens, and a clear atmosphere of control. And when asked who orchestrated it all, Cassie didn't hesitate. Her answer was firm and direct:
Diddy controlled everything about these freak-offs, according to Cassie. She says that he decided who the escorts would be. He would approve the escorts before she contacted them. He would pick the locations. He would set the lighting, even placing candles and moving them around during the course of the freak-offs. And he would determine what she did with the escort. He would tell her what to do, and then telling him, where to. Very, very, graphic and explosive testimony from Cassie. And I think, being in the overflow room when she was talking about it, there were gasps when she said that.
Something else that came up that we've heard a lot about before is the baby oil aspect. The defense addressed this in their opening statement, saying, you've probably heard of his love of baby oil. That's not a federal crime. But in this side of the story we heard from Cassie, we started to hear how that baby oil was being used and how it was in an environment that made her feel very uncomfortable.
Yeah. So I think the importance of the baby oil, and today it's something that the prosecution was asking her over and over about how many bottles of baby oil did you use, which shockingly she said that they would go through sometimes over 10 bottles of baby oil during one freak off. They would have to have more baby oil brought in. And I think the element that the prosecution is getting at here is the racketeering element. The baby oil is being used to portray this whole operation that Diddy had around him, assistants and chiefs of staff and things like that, bringing in stuff to the freak-offs, whether it was drugs that assistants would bring in or, lubricant or baby oil, which is something that was very heavily talked about. Cassie also said that she was just doused in baby oil. She would be forced to have it rubbed all over her, rubbed all over the escort. She said by the end of the freak-offs, the rooms were often covered in baby oil. The linens were completely soiled. The furniture was messed up, and that Diddy would get these really high bills from the hotel about replacing the furniture and things like that.
Allegedly told her to get into an inflatable pool filled with baby oil and lube. Court transcriptions obtained by Law and Crime show the prosecutor asked, who, if anyone, asked you to get into the pool? Ventura responded, Sean, it was his idea. The prosecutor asked, did you want to get into a pool of baby oil? Ventura responds, at that point, I couldn't say no. It would have been all bad. After an objection, the prosecutor then asks, what concerns did you have about not getting into the pool with baby oil? Ventura responds, that, amongst other things, just his temper. If that is something that he wanted, Sean wanted it to happen, that's what was going to happen. There wasn't another way around.
That one line, there wasn't another way, said everything. It captured the fear, the control, and the power imbalance Cassie described on the stand. The courtroom went silent, every word hanging heavy in the air. Outside, 50 Cent didn't miss a beat. As soon as the baby oil detail hit the headlines, his Instagram lit up. Mock sketches, news clips, even AI-generated images, all aimed squarely at Diddy. For 50, this wasn't just another court case. It was the moment he'd been waiting for. A long overdue reckoning unfolding in real time.
We all know who's got something to say about this whole Diddy trial, and that's 50 Cent! Those of you who don't know, 50 Cent was the absolute first one banging on Diddy. He's been doing it for over a decade now. So today we found out that Cassie said that Diddy asked her to get in an inflatable pool full of baby oil. Y'all remember that movie Old School where they had the KY wrestling in the pool? Sounds like he's ripping that off. 50 immediately started making AI images of Diddy and took to Instagram with these, like, look at this. This goofy ass shit right here is my favorite, and it shows why 50 will always be the king of troll.
50 Cent didn't hold back. As shocking courtroom revelations surfaced, he flooded his socials with AI videos, sharp commentary, and headlines highlighting the alleged seizure of over 1,000 bottles of lubricant. But to him, this wasn't breaking news. It was proof of everything he's been hinting at for years. Still, prosecutors quickly clarified, the case wasn't about the items, it was about control. Cassie's testimony painted a dark and painful picture, long, distressing encounters, drug use to numb the experience, and an overwhelming fear of the consequences if she resisted. What she described wasn't true consent. It was fear disguised as choice, control masked as intimacy.
That Diddy would release some of these freak-off videos unless she did certain things. The question is, what certain things? She begged Combs to delete these videos. She said that he used the threat of releasing the videos to shame her, including while she was seeing someone else. See, the problem with that is the seeing someone else is not the criminal charge. Now, that sounds to me, if it's true, that it's extortion. I mean, that's a crime.
Judge Aaron Subramanian was clearly nearing his limit. With Cassie in the final stages of pregnancy and the trial clock ticking, Diddy's legal team made a bold, last-ditch play, dropping over 400 surprise exhibits overnight in a clear attempt to undermine her testimony. But the move backfired fast. The judge slammed it down immediately, calling it out for what it was. Prosecutors were visibly furious. Inside the courtroom, the air was thick with tension. Every glance, every word, loaded. It felt like something explosive could happen at any moment.
As these text messages that Cassie had, and they were having her read them, but it just came across as disorganized and ineffective. In fact, many of the text messages that they kept showing in court, well, they just approved things that she's already admitted to. It was just really weird. And then even some of the things they presented, the text messages, well, they backfired on the stand. I would say most of them backfired on the stand. They had absolutely no punch to them. We were expecting all of this evidence and this really hard fighting cross-examination, but if it wasn't backfiring, it just fell flat. There was really no teeth to the entire thing. Now, one of the things they started asking her about outside the text messages was about this drug-laced baby oil during freak-offs. Altogether, it's irrelevant to the entire case, but somehow they wanted to bring this up. And it just seems like it was made to create sensational headlines rather than get to anything substantive. And especially the things that Cassie has already testified to. Like, how does drug-laced baby oil help you at all? Now, when they asked her about it, Cassie said, like, during our relationship, there was no drug-laced baby oil. So again, that alone backfired. But there were multiple instances of things backfiring in the courtroom. A lot of people in the courtroom felt like the defense's approach just wasted time. Let's get to Diddy's courtroom meltdown. And you could visibly see that he was very angry. So he had this meltdown right after a judge reprimanded his defense team for delaying tactics. I brought this up in another video. Overnight, they submitted 400 exhibits to the court. And the prosecutors were livid, but not just the prosecutors. The judge was pretty pissed off about this. They're trying to introduce this last minute evidence. Now, they claim that it's for to refute Cassie's testimony in the first 2 days when she was on the stand as a witness for the prosecution, and that they need this to fight back what she was saying. But overall, it just disrupted the courtroom, and the judge is trying to keep these things going. He doesn't want Cassie to be on the stand but a certain amount of time, because I always keep saying she's 8.5 months pregnant. She can give birth any day, and he's trying to keep this timeline. This is already a very long trial. It's expected to last 8 to 10 weeks. So he was not putting up with any of the shenanigans. Getting back to Diddy being pissed off.
Moments after the judge shut down the defense's last-minute stunt, Diddy reportedly lost it. Witnesses described nearly 10 minutes of tense, simmering silence before he finally exploded, calling his legal team in one by one and launching into a fierce tirade filled with sharp, cutting insults. In a courtroom where control is everything, his public unraveling left the room in shock. No one expected that kind of outburst. Not there, not then. It was a clear sign. The pressure was cracking through the surface.
After the dispute for the timeline over Cassie's cross-examination, and because they had submitted all this, Diddy seemed like furious, and he actually isolated himself during a recess from his attorneys for about 10 minutes, and that they were all standing at least a couple of feet away from him. So he's over there fuming. And then one by one, he calls each one over individually and berates them, like snarling and getting loud and just really dramatic. You could see it on his face. This is what people are reporting. So he's reprimanding his own defense team. Now, of course, he is the client. He's paying millions of dollars for this defense. He's bringing in 1,000 different lawyers for different things. So I can understand him being upset, but the evidence is the evidence. They have what they have to work with. I don't know if he's hoping they can manufacture something, if they can spin a better narrative, but these are top attorneys. So if they're not able to do it, the only person he should be pissed at is himself. Another little tidbit about this. Not only was he berating them and showing himself being visibly pissed off, but he was actually calling them derogatory names, cussing them out. Yes. I mean, we expect that from Diddy. If you ever watched Making the Band back in the day, you could see back then what a disgusting man he was, how derogatory he would speak to people, the names he would say, the things he would have them do. He had one time some of these kids who were trying to make it into one of his bands and become artists, become stars, walk from Manhattan, where they were staying, all the way to Brooklyn to, I believe, what's the cheesecake place? I forget the name of it. I've actually eaten there before, the one they have now in Times Square. It wasn't only in Brooklyn then, but they now have different locations. But he had them walk all the way there, across a bridge, miles, in order to get some cheesecake. It later came out, years later, this came out recently, that cheesecake was actually for Beyonce. Now, we don't know that Beyonce demanded this cheesecake. She may have just said she wanted cheesecake. Someone could have drove over and gotten her some cheesecake. But instead, he had these kids walk there, get the cheesecake, and then they didn't even want the cheesecake when it was done. So he's used to berating people, having them do what he wants, and cussing them out, which he would do on that show. But we've seen this multiple times from Diddy, multiple reports, witnesses, people who have been subjected to this, that this is how Diddy operates, even in business. Even in business situations, he will do this. And imagine, he's on trial and he's cussing out his attorneys. Is that supposed to help them, give him a better defense? It makes no sense, but it's in par with his personality type, and he just can't see himself. Well, he decided to take over the whole direction of the team. He wanted to orchestrate their very questioning to Cassie. He started passing notes, and barked orders, directed the attorney's actions, including what questions to ask and how to proceed. So the female defense attorney who was doing the questions, she had to keep pausing just so she could go back and forth and get notes from Diddy and the other lawyers. And she had to alter her line of questioning in real time, and you can tell. This is what made their entire line of questioning, which was already scattered and nonsensical, even worse, because I guess Diddy is working off his memories and wants them to press these questions, but they haven't been vetted. They can't ask just anything in court. There has to be a build up to it, a lead up to it. They can't just throw out any type of thing to the wall to see what sticks. But in Diddy's mind, again, he has to be in control. And this is how he's asserting control even over his own lawyers in the courtroom. But it's making the defense worse. What was already scattered is even worse. It's more scattered than it ever was. And then the jury can see him doing this. They can see him upset. They can see him angry. They see the control he's trying to assert over his own legal defense team. That does not look good in a courtroom to a jury.
Picture this: your freedom hanging by a thread, and you're snapping at the very people trying to save you. Diddy was pouring out serious money, but when even top-tier lawyers can't hold the line, maybe the problem isn't the plan, it's the man. 50 Cent wasted no time, turning the chaos into content, flooding the internet with digital jabs. But it wasn't just shouting. Diddy tried to take control. He scribbled frantic notes, barked orders, and micromanaged every move like the courtroom was his stage. One lawyer even froze mid-argument, completely thrown off by the disruption. This wasn't a defense. It was a breakdown in real time. Diddy's composure? Gone. His legal team? Rattled. And Judge Subramanian? You could see it. His patience was wearing thin.